Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Doom Patrol Season 2, Episode 6. It's called Space Patrol. So, full spoilers for the episode, as always. And yes, they casually just went into space as if it was nothing. I have a couple of size questions of this ship, because it was like sitting in a storage locker, and then when we're actually inside the ship, it looks like there's like multiple levels and shit. I don't know. There was
To be fair, they live in the middle of nowhere. That storage locker could be pretty big.
I'm just saying there's some TARDIS level size discrepancies going on in here.
That is a bit of an exaggeration, and you know it. TARDIS level, my ass.
Okay, TARDIS late. There's some TARDIS late shenanigans going on. But yes, Dorothy feeling bad for what she's done, because we see Jane, like in the real world, that is, Jane's lying there with just wax all over her face, and Dorothy gets scared and runs. The others are looking for her for a while, but she actually launches off in a spaceship. What spaceship, you might ask? The spaceship that lands just as Larry's getting home with oh my god, I was half expecting them to say they were the challenge of the unknown. I'm not gonna lie.
I was too.
I was getting vibes of this, but no, they're the pioneers of the Uncharted, which, I mean, the pulpy way they introduced themselves, the way they sort of like came across as if they're cheesy characters from a 50s movie, delighted me to no end.
It was delightful. That is the correct word for this, I think.
Yes, delightful in so many ways. This is one of Doom Patrol's best episodes. This is kind of a combination of a lot of things that make Doom Patrol work. And I feel like it had one of the best pacing and narrative structures of any of the episodes thus far. It feels like it's hitting its stride in a lot of ways. The core arc of, well, I mean, arguably which one's the core, I suppose, but like we have Cliff cracking me up early in the episode. The way he was joking about after he found Jane, he says, "Wait, is Dorothy out in the front yard plating Rita's skin?" Simple little jokes like that. Getting mad and saying, "Where are you, Dorothy?" Effing Dorothy, kind of thing. He's constantly saying things about her, and I did not expect it to build up to a point in this episode where he has to be the one to go and give her the pep talk.
He has to become the father figure, which,
yeah,
I think that's, in retrospect, I really like the episode where he visited his daughter again. Because at the time we were like, I mean, yeah, we kind of did a lot of this last season, right? I think I like it a lot more in retrospect now, when it's become clear that he is going to essentially become that father figure for Dorothy instead of Clara, right? And kind of seeing that now makes me appreciate that more. Of, okay, he had to go through that again.
Yeah, because like she steals the spaceship. She at first I thought she went to the moon, and I was going to complain about some sound later, but then I realized, wait, there's all these weird crystal things in the ground.
This doesn't look very moon-like.
Nah. This is more of a plot. I mean, it looks moon-like, and there doesn't look as much atmosphere, but I'll buy there's enough for sound. I'll just buy there's enough for sound, because it's not the moon. It's fine.
Yeah. Look, there are weirder things on this show to worry about.
I'll roll with it. But yeah, she just casually goes into space, and then there's like a shot of her walking across this planet with like the invisible friend like talking to her, as she walks across, which is wonderful, surreal Doom Patrol stuff. And then even like Cliff getting in the spaceship and being like, "What the F?" They're doing his thing, just being shocked and just so casually. And even the fact that Niles invented space travel, but the technology wasn't quite there yet, so there was a bit of weird magic involved to get the thing going.
With definitely not a cursed goat's head feeding it, fueled by eating apples.
Yes. This is the Doom Patrol version of Mr. Fusion from Back to the Future, where you just give it an apple and that'll fuel the whole spaceship. But I love the touch that obviously Cliff can go out and talk to her and doesn't need a suit because he's just a robot. He can just go out. So the chief has to basically plead with them to go like, "I'll never ask you for anything else, but you have to go be a father figure. You have to go and tell her that I'm sorry and get her back." He goes out and he finds her, and I love that he's still doing it kind of reluctantly. It's kind of the chief's kind of blackmailing him. He's like, "If you ever want me to try and give you a better body, like you're going to go out there
now,
and get my daughter back." And he's kind of still, pissed about it. He's not really feeling it, but once
halfway through, he just kind of softens.
well, it's more specifically when he goes and sees her. He sees her forming a grave site for her imaginary friend that died. And he sits down, and all of a sudden the tone changes. He sits down, the piano music comes in, and he asks if he can sit a while. We cut away, we come back, and it becomes this great heart-to-heart where he tells her that Jane will understand. She won't be mad at him. He makes mistakes too, and he relates to her. He's able to actually talk to her and give some good advice and make her feel better, which is, I think, more important than getting her to come back for all the obvious plot reasons of, she might just make a wish to destroy the planet, which, the chief makes this clear. She can just wish the planet will get destroyed, and her imaginary friends might be powerful enough to make that happen. If not yet, they will at some point. Yeah. So, wonderful stuff in terms of that. But I think the core thing here is the arc for Cliff. It's his acceptance of actually trying to be, because for the first half of the episode, much like he was last episode, and I love that that's been there for a few episodes, the bubbling of him just being kind of awful when it comes to Dorothy and just constantly saying things about how shitty she is and how much he hates her. Yeah, and
this here when Jane is in a coma and he's like, no, I'm Team Jane. What the hell are you doing? It's really fascinating to watch him just snipe at her. It's this really passive aggressive jealousy. It's almost played in the same way as, like a young child getting a new sibling that's taking all the attention.
Kinda, yeah. So I thought that stuff was wonderful, and it's heart of the episode. It's rare that someone will steal it from Larry and get more heart than he does. But I think Cliff and Dorothy take it this episode.
Yeah, I agree.
So, full points there. And obviously it wasn't the best effects in the world, but it felt stylized to the show's style.
I really loved the shot at the end when they're walking back across it. I thought that shot looked gorgeous.
Yeah, and I think if they weren't holding hands, they were at least walking side by side, so they felt unified. It felt like a sweet kind of coming together. Of course, the chief has to kind of ruin at the end where he jettisons Cliff out of space.
What a dick.
Yeah, and I get the impression that he doesn't actually want to go back to Earth because he thinks it's safer for him and her to, take her somewhere else, take her somewhere that's either off Earth or somewhere where they don't know where they are.
It's quite possible. Do you think maybe he aimed Cliff in the direction of Earth?
I would hope, because if he didn't, then it's a real dick move.
Yeah.
It's a real dick move if he didn't, especially after his speech. Especially after he kind of implied... Well, no, actually, yeah, he did kind of imply. He implied that he wants them to be a family for her. That this is something that Dorothy's going to need. And to be fair, Cliff actually does kind of say this to him, where after he comes back with her when she's asleep, because right before this is kind of what makes the jettison even more heartbreaking. Is that Cliff says, "No, you know what? If I need to be a father figure when you're gone and Dorothy needs it, F it, I'm in." It's actually the most Cliff way of agreeing to it, but he does.
Yeah, and then I was like, you have no idea how much that means to me. Sorry about this. Off you go. I wonder if Dorothy can just wish them home. So
I hope that Cliff was shot in the direction of Earth. Otherwise, this is a complete dick move.
Yeah.
from the chief. So no, really, really solid stuff. I can't really fault any of this plotline. I loved it. Well, actually, I'll fault one thing. Cliff's still yelling in space at the end, which does bother me. There's no sound in space.
It just doesn't bother me on this show. I mean. There are some things, if a show is trying to take things seriously, then yeah, that matters. If it's appropriate to the tone, I don't care. I'd rather have the funny moment, or whatever it is in this case, rather than the realism of it. Because this show doesn't give a shit about realism. This is a show where we are in a rocket, a pre-Sputnik rocket, powered by a demonic demon head. Who gives a shit if they can talk in space?
No, I still do. This is one of these things where I just, ever since, whatever age I was when I learned that there should be no sound in space, it doesn't matter what it is, it bothers me. Unless it's just straight up cartoon levels, which this is not. It is not, and you can't argue that.
No, but I mean, just creative license.
There's no sound in space.
I'd rather have this than... I'd rather have Cliff yelling and the comedy of that.
But this wasn't funny, though. This is the thing. You're saying it was funny. I actually think it'd have been more effective if he was yelling as he was going out, but then as soon as he went outside, the sound just cut, because that's it.
Nah.
No more sound. It would actually make for a more effective moment. It's one thing when there's some thumps or whatever, I'm fine with it, but come on, straight up talking like this, nah.
Just doesn't bother me.
No, it does. Yeah, Star Wars is stupid for it as well. Well, I'm on it. All right.
That's because it's fantasy. We've been over this.
It's still space. I don't care. And there's been many a great thing that has, bent the rules a bit when it comes to sound in space. I try to hold anything on a pedestal here, but it's
just doesn't matter.
no, it does. There's no sound in space, right? Star Wars, all of them, are right up there with Superman: A Quest for Peace.
Look,
And
Star Wars is a fantasy universe in which there is some sort of breathable, maybe not breathable, but there is some sort of particles in space to travel, for the sound to travel through. That's all. Doesn't matter. It's not our space. It's a fictionalized version of space with some physics of its own.
No. The opening text says, "A long time ago in a galaxy far away." That puts it in our universe. Doesn't put it in our galaxy, obviously, but it puts it in our universe. It's still space.
The amount of bullshit that this is, and you know it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You
You saying there's particles in this version of space isn't bullshit? Come on. What's more ridiculous out of the two statements we just said? That I said that it's still technically space. It still thoroughly says it's in our past.
It's a fantasized version of space. Maybe millennia and aeons ago, there was some level of particles in space that are now gone. Who knows? Undetectable by our modern instrumentation. You can't prove that that's not true.
I suppose technically that's true. Doesn't change the fact that I'm right, but I know it's true. Yes. So, so that was the Cliff and Dorothy stuff, which I loved. Larry, of course, meets the pioneers of the Uncharted, and discovers that two of them, the two men, are actually not really alive anymore. They are husks that have been taken over by some sort of parasite or something, some silly alien thing.
Space thing.
Yeah, and they're actually dying. The Earth's atmosphere is actually killing them. So by the end of the episode, they're being buried. And obviously warned not to eat anything that grows on top of their graves. But we find out the woman, the Russian, actually has a negative spirit in her, and I felt the gut punch. Like, Larry just can't get a win. See the scene where she just casually mentions, "Oh, it took me about 5 years to bond with my spirit, so that I didn't have to worry about radiation anymore."
And he's like, 5 years, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm ashamed it took as long as it did. How long did it take you?"
Going on 50.
Yeah. Never mind.
So, but I did love all the thematic stuff that she brings to the table here, where she says that, well, once I accepted that, it was we, it's not just me. There's two of us, and that kind of acceptance. I really like the potential of what Larry's story is going to be going through here.
It mirrors definitely some of the stuff I recall from various comics with the negative spirit specifically, and Larry and where that could go. So I wonder if we do get that sort of level of shake-up with that character.
It would mean losing the voice, though. It would mean going elsewhere with that. So
it would, but it could be a really interesting direction to take it, and not out of nowhere.
I think maybe they'll do it eventually. I think the reason that losing the voice and losing Matt Bomer performance, who I do think adds a lot to that character, I think that's the reason why they might change how it works for the show, just so they can keep him as the performer. I can see them doing that.
That said, I kind of got enough trust in this show at this point that if they want to go that other route and we need to recast essentially in some form, their casting department has been on fire with pretty much everyone. That I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, there's no standouts of like, that was a poor choice. So yeah, I suppose I should trust them. I guess I just don't want to lose them. I suppose.
No, I get that, but that could be a fantastic character arc for him as well. Not wanting to lose himself to become this we, right?
Yeah.
That could be a fantastic kind of arc for this show.
But I kind of like the thematic stuff that's come up here, and he even kind of ends with like, I'm going to go back to my family and solve this. I'm not going to just run away and never go back to them. Because there's a point early on in the episode with I think it's with Rita, maybe it's with the Russian, but he actually says he kind of sums up like the justification for how he feels is like, I technically, my son killed himself over the obsession of his missing father. Like, if that's not worth resenting myself over, I don't know what is. And it's like, when you sum it up like that, that's pretty bad. It does feel like you know why he feels guilty. It doesn't feel unearned.
And that is Larry's defining characteristic. Like, if Cliff's is his anger issues, Larry's is his self-deprecation, right? So it makes sense that that's the thing he's got to get over eventually. Yeah.
So no, I dug that stuff a lot. But yeah, so that was good. Rhea's stuff, there was I felt kind of bad for a second when she walked into the theater, because it set up that she was going to the theater to do this acting stuff. And when she was walking, I was like, by this point in the episode, we'd already had the pioneers, we'd already had the Dorothy stuff, and at least I think we started going to space. I was like, man, is Rita's plot going to even have a chance of like standing up against this? And I have to admit, this being the comic relief where she realized the play they were doing wasn't the classic play or town, it was a story about this town, and that the very enthusiastic young woman sitting next to her was going to play the blob lady, as they called it. Everything with her talking about the blob lady and like it's sucking the entire world into the folds of her skin.
This bit has my biggest laugh of the episode as well.
Go on.
It's at the end of all that stuff where the actor playing Rita essentially, gives that big speech about who she is, and Rita gives her a little bit of advice, and she leaves. She's like, "I found my nemesis."
Yeah.
That killed me.
But I especially like how she tries to sort of like steer. She's like, yeah, but what if she's more of a human? I mean, even villains are heroes in their own story. And she kind of like goes along in the right lines.
She's like, wait, was that not what I was playing it?
Yeah.
I thought I was doing that, and so I'll have to do better. And then she starts talking through it, and it's like, okay.
To the point where she's even talking about mother issues, and she's like kind of nailing it. And it says, yeah, but she can't go over any of that. So she says she's everything her mother said she was, and then she tries to kill the world.
yeah. And then it's like she just needs to achieve her goals, and she's like, well, what are her goals? Well, to swallow all the world inside her rolls or whatever it was. And Rita's just like,
Rita's
God damn
face.
this bitch.
Yeah, Rita's face through this entire thing was, even when she's sitting in the audience at the start of the scene watching like the end of the scene play out. All of it was cracking me up.
The name of the acts was like one of them was to do with the donkey.
Yeah. There was stuff about the donkey, there was stuff about the town being swallowed. There was lots of little things that were clearly references to the like season 1 and some of the stuff.
Like the first couple episodes of season 1. That stuff, very funny though.
Yeah, gold. Vic, of course, is with Ronnie, and there's a couple of weird lines where he's like, "I want to look inside you," and she's like, "Can you say that less creepy?" But basically, he wants to scan her and see if he can like help with their pain, with the because she's got constant injuries and medication and stuff, and basically discovers that, hey, this is kind of leaking stuff into your system which could kill you. And she's like, I know, like
it's not could, it is killing me.
And he's like, hold on a second, this is I've hacked the government database. In fact, even that was a funny little beat where he kind of was like, oh ding, hacked, I've hacked the government. But he's like, yeah, this is Star Labs tech. So he's like,
it was Star Labs and Calder tech as well.
Yeah, I'm calling my father. I'm going to sort this out. And it kind of just ends there. There's not a lot of advancement in this episode. It kind of almost ends in a bit of a joke moment as well, where Silas is like, wait a minute, for a girl? You're doing this for a girl? Son, talk to me. You're burying the lead here. What's going on?
There was some interesting stuff here for me, though, in terms of calling back a couple of episodes as well, where this was a combination effort between Star Labs and Calder. So it's after Silas gave that big speech about how he'll never work with Niles. The man's a hack. He's a criminal. And I'm like, well, okay, is this kind of where this animosity has come from?
Yeah, because you presume they worked together at some point, and that's what gave him the distaste for Niles going forward.
Yeah.
So,
but then he doesn't come out completely clean of this either, because he's like, hey son, I'm gonna level you with you. This stuff, that's where the money came to create you, essentially. It's like that, the only reason you exist is because of that money.
Yeah, so hopefully Silas gets to redeem himself a little bit and maybe help, stop the killing part of this at the very least. If not, give her a bit of an upgrade. Although this show, being so depressing, I can see her being like a super villain by the end of the season. Like she gets upgrades, but she goes kind of crazy or something, and it ends up in this fight.
That would be a really sad thing, because her whole thing so far has been how she got sucked into the power of having those extra abilities, and now she's kind of free of it and trying to live normal and deal with that guilt. The idea of, okay, as soon as she gets it back, like an addict, essentially, she caves and goes back to it. That would be a really a really solid arc for this show to take on.
Yeah, it'd be punishing to the soul, but it would work. I will say, I mean, this is not a real complaint. I felt the budget sort of like kind of like them saving some money here, because every single scene with them was just in her apartment. Like, it was just in that same room, every single scene. And I was like, okay, this is where you save the money for the space stuff, is you had all this plot just be in the one room.
Shoot it all in one day in the bedroom.
Yeah. So, that was their stuff. And of course, the one thing we've not talked about yet is Jane inside the underground, and kind of the funeral procession, essentially, for the two fallen personalities, which Jane even questions, can they even really be killed? Like, should we throw them in the well? And she kind of she goes to see the real girl at one point, and she goes, Kay, and she tries to talk them out of it. She tries to stop them at the well from throwing them in. And then Miranda...
And she seems to have them convinced almost. She pulls rank. She's like, I'm primary and I'm making this call.
But then Miranda, who's the previous primary, like, emerges from the well and says, no, I mean, I did die, but I was, I came back and it's stronger than ever, so they should go in the well.
It's, this idea of, no, they don't understand the well. They've been afraid of it, but it's not what they understand, clearly. It's not this place of death. It's maybe a place where they get fixed. Maybe it's a place of birth instead.
Yeah, well, I would sort of, because obviously the representation of this is that the evil monster that represents the father is in there. I would have to assume that this idea of this is like confronting your trauma and kind of getting over it, essentially, and that's kind of happened for just Miranda because she's been down there, and that's why she's came out stronger and like sort of tougher on the other side.
And obviously she throws the others in there so that they can come back like her. Is the illusion, clearly, but there is something a little sinister about Miranda here. Like,
I'm not sure, because obviously the end of the episode is that she says, Jane, if you let me take over as primary, I can fix whatever's wrong. I can see what Kay really wants and deal with this. So at the end of the episode is like, Jane, because I like that you can see Jane sort of crying on the table where she's been left lying, and then of course she changes to Miranda for the ending, and even the way she sits up at the end,
it's different.
It feels a little bit sinister. So is it really Miranda? Is this like an evil part of her pretending to be Miranda?
Or maybe it is Miranda, but Miranda was corrupted down in the well rather than dead, and this is all this manipulation.
This is it's not that she's come back stronger. This is a Miranda who has sort of become more of a victim of the evil that's down there and becomes sort of reliant on it, or
and maybe throwing those two personalities down there is kind of her recruiting an army almost. Like her side, like they'll come back on her side, perhaps.
Either that or just killing them off so that she, the less personalities, the more in power she is.
I mean, either or, right?
Yeah.
Both work, but I definitely feel like there's some level of manipulation and sinister stuff going on with Miranda. I don't trust her.
Yeah, I got a vibe. Yeah, I agree. I get a vibe as well here. So very curious to see how that goes. So, I mean, obviously, as always, these plots or these episodes tend to break down into like sometimes 3, sometimes as many as 5 stories in a single episode, and obviously but I think what I really liked about this is not only with the high points, and I'm thinking of Cliff and Dorothy stuff really being the high points with Niles, and to an extent some of Larry stuff, but not only were the high points so high, I felt like the pacing of this episode and the way all the plots complemented each other, not because they were all thematically super linked, although some of them were a little bit. It was more just they balanced each other out in terms of, okay, Rita's is a bit more comedy focused, this one's a bit more of this. They all kind of just nicely linked together. So by the time we got to the point where the music was playing and it cut to like the funeral procession on the way to the well, like everything just felt like it was gelling together so well. The way it was bouncing around plots, I felt like my one kind of critique of Doom Patrol thus far, and it's been relatively minor, is that sometimes the first half of some of the episodes feel like they're kind of a bit too lackadaisical before they actually get to kind of the flowing properly for what the episode actually is going to turn out to be. This one I felt quite quickly everything was firing on all cylinders almost from the get-go, and I felt like this is really them finding their footing a bit.
Early on, where you've got Cliff coming back waving around a finger.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, I'm in.
Yeah, everything just felt like it was firing on all cylinders. So I feel like there was not a lot that had to improve on this show, really. But if there was one thing that did it, was maybe just locking in that structure a little bit and that pacing a little bit, just to kind of make it all come together.
Carry that forward, or if it's just a one-off.
Yeah, and it's not a big deal if it isn't, because the show was still really good anyway. Still, DC Comics' best TV show, quite frankly. But
by a country mile.
But you know what I think it is? I think the way it handled the character story here for Cliff, especially, it really felt like it's hitting a new peak for how it handles its characters' journeys and stories. It felt like it paid off a lot of things that it's been building for the last few episodes since the start of the season. Because I think this season, compared to last season, the first batch of episodes felt a lot more like, let's just see what happens next, as opposed to season 1, where you had this central villain that was kind of driving the plot. Whereas, okay, we had the Dorothy stuff, and okay, her imaginary characters might kill everything.
But it's kind of all spiraled out in its own weird directions. Like Larry's stuff has spiraled out from that one thing of, oh, his son died, and it's spiraled out from there. And Dorothy has been a focus, I guess, but it's been handled in a very different way.
Yeah, and I feel like this episode, it really felt like everything feels like it's starting to pay off on what it's been built beforehand, which I don't know if we're going to feel satisfied with episode 9, given that it wasn't meant to be the ending, but this at least makes me feel like it's already starting to reach a point where it feels like things are coming together. So I think we're going to really at least feel what we're supposed to be feeling by that point, and it's going to feel like we've built up to something. It may just be kind of a painful, like, oh god, we have to wait maybe a year or something before, maybe even more than that, for more episodes. So
I mean, as long as there are more episodes, I'm okay.
Yes, as long as they renew it. HBO Max, because it's not going to be DC Universe, let's be honest.
And this is the thing. We don't know if HBO Max are trigger happy on renewing things yet. We don't know. We don't even know. Like, with Netflix as well, like, we've got to a stage where you kind of know how long, on average, it's going to take. Like, if you don't hear anything within 3 or 4 months, you're probably shit out of luck.
I have no idea. And, like, do they get, like, to come back and do the last 5 episodes as a little mini-season sort of extension, and then maybe get renewed for season 3? Or is it just a season 3 renewal that gives us 50 more episodes, so they kind of have to merge whatever they were going to wrap up with next into, a slightly shorter season, essentially.
Which wouldn't be too bad, because let's say, that is the case. All right, they got 5 episodes here to go with, but then they've got essentially at that point, if you consider those first 5 episodes of season 3 actually the end of season 2, there's still then a 10-episode season 3, which is more than enough for this show to do something really solid.
As long as they're planning for that and they're writing for that's fine. Yeah, totally fine. Yeah. So we'll see. We just want more, basically. As long as they give us more, I'm not going to complain.
We really do want more.
So there you go, Doom Patrol. Quite frankly, one of its best episodes yet. It's
which I think is impressive in how, relatively speaking, by this show's standards, unweird it is. I mean, there's this, some weird space stuff.
I don't know, the casual way Niles just has this little spaceship in his storage locker. It's very Doom Patrol weird.
It is, but it doesn't seem as weird as some of the other stuff we've been dealing with in this show.
The casual sort of Colonel Weird from Black Hammer sort of vibes from these characters that come down as well. There's a lot of it's not normal. That's what I'm saying. But by this show's standards, it doesn't feel like these these characters don't feel as out of nowhere. They don't feel as strange as like the sex Ghostbusters. I don't know. They're a bit equally on the pulp side for me. I don't know. I don't think I agree with that assessment.
I don't feel they had quite the I don't know, like the strikingly weirdness. Like, I've like, okay, it's cosmonauts doing B movies 50s shtick. Like, okay, that's cool, but it wasn't as weird for me as like seeing the sex men.
This is a weird way you're thinking about this. To me, these are both they're weird in different ways, but they're both equally weird in the context of a TV show where it's set in present day and stuff's happening. Like, no, they're equally both on the weird scale. But anyway, let us know what you think of episode 6 of Doom Patrol Season 2. We only have 3 left, so let's make the most of them. So let us know what you think in the comments. Like and subscribe. Like is really important on YouTube. Lets the algorithm know that you think we're worth sharing out, so YouTube will do so, and more people will find us, so that's really helpful. You can support us financially over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV for as little as $1 per month and get some bonuses for your trouble, help keep all the content coming. And then, of course, you can get us on Twitter at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. But that is us, so thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?